Got a death wish, you better stay out of my way. Oh! That's the end of you.
The battery has been...
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we're here today to talk Lawbreakers. Today we're going to be talking about the Titan class that include Bombshell and Kronos. Now, for the most part, this is going to be a sort of more casual, laid-back discussion, but it is still very much a guide that's going to help you get started with the Titan class. That's why I'm calling it Learning the Titan. The way I like to do my guides, and the way I did a lot of my guides for Titanfall 2, was to pick a weapon or a class, or a Titan in that case of this game, just a class, right? Start to play that class, and once I hit like the 5 to 10 hour mark, and I feel like I've learned a lot and I've dealt with a lot of the struggles that that class deals with, make a video like this, where we talk about those things, we reflect on those things, and I give you guys a clear path, a sort of an outline of what you can expect when you start to play that specific class. So it's a little bit easier to overcome those things, and also, of course, throw in a few tips and tricks, things I've learned along the way. They're going to make the class a little bit easier for you to play the first time around. Once we hit like that heavy-duty 20-30 hour mark with the class, and we're really at a point where we know every single nook and cranny, and I feel like I can function really well consistently with that class, then we go in and we do like a hardcore edited guide. So I'm going to be doing that for all of the classes in Lawbreakers as I play them, as I get more comfortable with them, and as we move into the game's full release. This way we're not doing like full-fledged guides during beta, when a lot of stuff could potentially change as we get to full release. So let's talk about the Titan. The Titan is, by most standards, like the basic idea of what movement speed is in this game, the slowest class, if you will. The Enforcer is actually pretty slow, even with his boost on when he comes to walking normally, but the Titan is probably a bit slower. That means that you have to use other means to navigate the early portions of the map very quickly. So rocket jumping is one of the first things that you might want to consider with the class. Now, I'm not going to say it's required or necessary to learn to rocket jump with the Titan, and I think a lot of people will look at the task of rocket jumping as nearly unsurmountable when they first start playing the class. So let's just get that out of the way. If you want to get into it, spend some time practicing. We'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of this video, but it is not necessary. You can still walk normally, and of course use blind fire in zero-G environments to make your way from one map to the other. You're just going to have to be very conservative with your rockets and, you know, getting them reloaded before you actually go into a gunfight. These are just things you're going to have to consider. Now, when it comes to actually dealing damage to your targets with the Titan, we can basically break down the rocket launcher's capabilities through 3 different categories. So we've got splash damage, which is damage fired at a wall or at the ground or any surface area that will then cause the rocket to detonate and cause damage to nearby targets. We've got direct, which is obviously hitting the target directly. This is where we're going to get maximum damage, but also it's the most difficult thing to do with the rocket launcher with the Titan. The last thing is airburst. So when you fire your rocket launcher in the air, you can right-click the mouse button or your Alt-Fire button if you're on PlayStation 4 to fire the rocket and detonate it early. Now, this is a great way to deal with targets mid-air, which is obviously a very commonplace situation in a game where we have zero-G zones. But it is not easy, and it's all going to be dependent on your personal depth perception. After playing, like, I think we're on the 8-hour mark with the Titan now I've gotten much better at measuring where the rocket is to land airburst and to get some pretty sick kills. It's not easy. It's still not consistent for me. You just need to play around with it. It's going to be one of the most frustrating aspects of the Titan, is having to fire that rocket mid-air at a target and either going for a direct hit or trying to get the airburst and just not landing it. Even in close quarters, airbursting can be effective. It's just something you want to consistently be considering. Now, there's something that I don't do often enough, and I know that I should. When you are dealing with close quarters engagements, you want to make sure that you're shooting for the feet. Now, you could go for a direct hit, and if you feel confident enough in doing that, by all means. But it makes a lot more sense to get guaranteed damage by aiming at the feet of your target to make sure that you're always hitting the ground and dealing that splash damage. It's still going to be very effective, and there's a good chance that you might even get a direct hit on the enemy's legs. It's just something to work on. Rockets have worked this way in other competitive first-person shooters for a long time. For example, if you're using the rocket launcher in Quake, outside of landing direct hits, a lot of damage is done by ground-based splash damage. So firing at the target's feet, making sure that you're always getting splash damage pumped on the target. It's definitely something to work and practice on. It's probably going to be your most common way of dealing damage with this class until you get really good and start dishing out powerful direct hits. Now, in order to really survive and to deal maximum damage against all of the characters, especially more mobile characters like the Wraith and the Assassin that are going to try and get in your faith, you're going to really need to work on your ability mix-up. So using your ground pound to initiate or even to finish fights, that's going to allow you to slam up into the air, deal damage. You can kill people this way. It's a really powerful tool when used correctly, not just for damage, but also for a small amount of evasion. If somebody's in your face and you ground pound, it's going to be difficult for them to continue to track you. Apart from that, the slowing grenade. So this is your grenade, your throwable with the Titan, is key to not just dealing damage, right? So being able to slow a target and then saturate them with rockets or land a ground pound or even just get up in their face and kick them, maybe even shut down an assassin or a gunslinger from rushing you. That's something you're going to constantly want to consider with your grenade. Setting up your grenade, using it often, making sure that you're not in a fight and having it up is very important. But you can also use it as a sort of objective shutdown or sort of crowd control tool. So say the enemy team pushes the blitzball into your base, you can actually throw that grenade, slow that guy down almost instantly, and then engage and kill him. Maybe somebody's trying to leave your base with the battery. You're the last person alive, you might have very little HP. Get that grenade off, though, at least slow him, maybe get a little bit of damage before you die, and let your team come in and clean up the kill. So the grenade is a super useful tool in and out of direct combat. It's something you want to constantly be mixing up, again, alongside of that ground pound. Now, the ground pound, believe it or not, even though it is not a direct mobility tool like some of the other classes have, can still be used to get you from one point to the other very quickly. I've actually used the ground pound many times to disengage combat situations. So maybe I'm in line of sight on a map like Vertigo, and I'm being engaged by a gunslinger at long range, and rather than walking slowly or taking more self-damage to rocket jump behind cover, I can just initiate that ground pound. It's on a 10-second cooldown. It'll be back up before you need it most likely, so don't be afraid to use that thing to get up on ledges even, to get from one point to the other just quickly. It doesn't give you a lot of distance covered, but it's more than enough to break line of sight with the enemy that is actively engaging you. Now, when we talk about the Titan's ult, none of the ults in this game, for the most part, are like hardcore, like instant kill buttons, right? Like Overwatch has very powerful ults. That's just the way that game is designed. Like you ult with any of the characters in Overwatch and they just lay into everything around them. It's not the case with anybody in this game, and especially not the Titan. The ability to shoot electricity out of your hands is very powerful, but it is still tracking based. There's no like auto aim going on here. You have to track your targets. It has reasonable range, but not excessive range, so you're gonna have to make sure they're in reasonable range with you to actively engage them. But more importantly, while you do get a massive boost to health, it's I believe around 400 HP boost, you're still very vulnerable. You're now a much bigger target. Everybody can shoot at you and see you. And if enemies are sitting at full health and there's multiples of them around, the chances of you killing even one of them before dying is very slim. So I like to follow the same motto I follow as a Roadhog player, and that is to never ult first. So there might be situations where you want to ult just to saturate an enemy with damage like the Enforcer, or I should say like the Juggernaut if they've got their shield up. Maybe you're just looking to give your team extra damage before you die. But if you're in a situation where you have like the up on the enemy team, it makes more sense to deploy your slow, to dump rockets, to do as much damage as you possibly can before initiating that ult, while also making sure that you're initiating that ult when you have as much health as you possibly do, so you can stay alive to get the most out of it. It's just all about like on-the-fly decision making. You're gonna have to just get comfortable with it. But I really recommend that you avoid doing something you're probably going to see me do in this footage. I'm sure I did it during this match numerous times. And that is to just like ground pound into 4 enemies, ult, and expect to get a kill. If you want to just distract the enemy, break up things, maybe you want to try and land on the overcharge, the battery, or, the uplink just to try and, get a little bit of damage, break the shields down on that so your team can come and swoop up. Fine, that's great. It makes a great distraction tool. If you just want to go in and tank and die within 30 seconds and hope your team picks up the mess, that's fine. But if you're looking to really use it to its most effect, you got to consider how much health the enemy team has, how many of them are around you, what's your current health state, and look for ways to really soak them up, to put more damage on them before you go ahead and actually engage your ult. So just something to consider. Now, I want to once again remind you, and I'm probably going to remind everybody on every class where I do a video like this, to kick people in the face. As the Titan, as the Juggernaut, slower characters, it's easy to, I should say more tanky characters, it's easy to get like Wraiths and Assassins really latched onto you. So the better you can get at kicking, and being able to accurately kick targets and also kick targets with proper timing to get them away from you, but also to not like spam and whiff a kick and then just get slashed anyways, it takes time. So the more you do it, the more you make it a part of like muscle memory to blend it in with your combinations and to be able to do it not so much instinctively, but to do it when you want to do it, exactly when you want to do it. That's going to be really important. I don't kick enough right now to this day. It's like a joke. I talk about it. Tony, you need to kick. Because if an assassin gets in your face and is able to lock on and finish a combo, you're pretty much screwed, even with, you know, 500 HP like the Titan has. So the first thing you want to do, as soon as you hear an assassin's blades land on you, is find them and kick them. Before you even shoot, before you do anything else, kick them away from you. Then you can consider, do I want to hit them with a rocket launcher? Maybe it's time to switch to the lightning gun. Maybe I want to ground pound to disengage or to, you know, actually engage them and then go into a fight. Please, whatever you do, kick them out of your face, though. If a wraith slides into you, kick them out of your face. Force them to have that distance between you, especially with the assassin. The assassin is usually going to rush you with blades out, and then all of a sudden, she's like focused 100% on close quarters, and now you boot her away. So she has a decision to make. Do I try and re-engage and take damage while I close the gap to go in with my blades? Or do I switch to my roamers and try and land shotgun rounds? You know, you've now put her in a position where she is no longer in control of the fight. So that is something you really want to do. That is the value of kicking, ladies and gentlemen. Now, speaking of the Crisper, your secondary lightning gun, it's really easy to neglect this thing, to not use it often enough. And I think the Crisper should be used in a similar situation to what we just talked about with the ult. It doesn't necessarily hurt to go in just with the Crisper, especially if you're engaging targets that are already focused on someone else. But the chance of actually melting somebody at full HP with the Crisper while they actively engage you is very slim. So again, you're looking to clean up targets with low HP. This is your backup tool. Imagine the Crisper as a sidearm. You get done dealing a bunch of damage with your primary, your rifle maybe, you know, in a situation like that. You switch to your pistol to clean them up. It's the same thing. Damage with your rocket. You know, soak as much as you can on the enemy, put them in a situation with low HP, switch to Crisper. Number one, you don't have to reload then. You can switch to the Crisper. You can worry about reloading your rocket launch later, and you can start to track fast-moving targets and do consistent, constant damage that you couldn't be doing with the rocket launcher, even if it was reloaded. So that's something to consider. Now, small pro tip about the Crisper, it doesn't ever have to actually be reloaded unless you overheat it. So controlling that thing and not overextending its use means you won't get locked out in that long overheat reload animation. And there's no reason to ever manually reload it. Like, if you're going to unequip it, don't hit the reload button. I've done this so many times before. If you're just finished a fight, don't waste time standing there reloading it. Get your rocket back up. Get your rocket reloaded again. The Crisper will cool down while it's in your inventory. Just something to really keep note of. Now, outside of that, it's really just going to be a lot about positioning with this class. You know, once you understand the basics of engagements, all of the different game modes are going to play out differently for the Titan. I find that Turf War is one of the more challenging modes depending on how supportive your team is, because it requires you to be so mobile, and also because you're a big target, man. And you don't actually put out that much DPS unless you're really good. You have to be really good to put out maximum DPS with this class, whereas the Enforcer, Gunslinger, every other class in the sun is going to be trying to soak damage into you. So if you can play that more support role and, you know, get yourself in a good position where the enemy team doesn't have line of sight on you, but you can still blast rockets into a point, for example, you know, fire from the outside looking in, you can deal maximum damage, you move in for the cleanup, that's where you're going to be most effective. Now, when it comes to the uplink, overcharge, and blitzball, I think the Titan can be a very good defensive character, but also a very good offensive one. Running either of those things back to cap point with the Titan is actually fairly easy when you're using blind fire in low G, so don't like downplay yourself if you're playing the Titan and say, oh, I can't run the ball, or I can't run you know, the uplink or the battery. I think especially the battery and the uplink, most of the maps, it's fairly easy to get those from center point back to your team's base with the Titan with just a few blind fire rockets and maybe some B-hops when you get comfortable with that if you start playing at the high skill level. So just get a feel for that. Like, you know, that's one of those things that I need to work on more too, is to like figure out how I can be more effective as a Titan player when I'm in you know, a match like Turf War. Turf War is ups and downs for me. I think too much of it right now is me relying on my team. So that's something to really work on. Now, if you're interested in learning how to bunny hop with the Titan, I kind of talked about that yesterday in my movement guide. I'll have that linked down in the pinned comment below, as there'll be an annotation as well. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, that's a great way to maintain mobility after you rocket jump. The best thing I can tell you when it comes to rocket jumping is to just practice the different methods. So you can rocket jump off the ground, and then like basically you want to whip back and point away, and then use that to propel yourself forward. You can rocket jump off of surfaces like walls, and then continue a B-hop. I'm kind of torn between which of the two works the best. I've kind of been using a combination. Sometimes I'll bounce off a wall and B-hop. Sometimes I'll just link rockets together. You have to remember that you are taking self-damage this entire time. So it's just something to consider. Now, we could talk a lot more about like where I think the Titan is in terms of like balance and performance, but I just don't think I've played enough with the class yet. It is definitely, I think, one of the more difficult classes in the game. And a lot of people, especially if you're looking to play competitive or if you're looking to do consistently well, are just going to say, why would you ever play the Titan? And I have to agree with them. It would make a lot more sense to just play the Enforcer or to pick up any other class, and you'll probably have a higher damage out point. But after 6.5 hours, I think that was like the first big chunk I played the Titan. I was already getting like 26, 21 kill games. So in public play, I think it's completely feasible to play the class. And maybe you can get really, really good. Maybe you can get alternate good eventually. And the class is really rewarding at that point. So while it may not be the most effective class, especially at a lower skill level, I think it's enough fun that you shouldn't pass up at least giving it a go. I know I've had a ridiculous amount of fun with it. I think at this point it's replaced the Juggernaut as my favorite class in the game. And I'm definitely just going to be playing more and more and more, hoping to get better and better and better. And hopefully one day I'll bring you guys like the dopest Titan guide ever. And I'll tell you all the secrets to being the best Titan player ever. But for now, I'm going to be okay with just being average and slightly above average in certain matches. And I hope you'll do the same and head out and give this class a go. If you have any other questions for me, anything else that you're sort of stumped on when it comes to playing the Titan, feel free to let me know down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer it. Other than that, be sure to check out my full Lawbreakers playlist. The open beta is going for 2 more days on PC. Download it, give this thing a go. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, remember to play smart, remember to play to challenge yourself, and most importantly, remember to play for fun.